Hi. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Freedom Friday with the bees. It didn't go live a minute ago for the health segment, so you're going to have to catch that on Facebook or someplace else until we get it uploaded to YouTube. But just give them a little summary of what you were talking about in the health segment, and then they'll have to watch the whole thing on Facebook.
Well, I was just talking about the real epidemic of autoimmune disease.
Say that again. The car just went by. Little louder.
I talk to people about the epidemic of autoimmune disease we have in this country, and probably much of the world, because of our environmental exposure to chemicals. But it's also not that. It's the mRNA shot that's changed our genetic code, which confuses our immune system. It's malnutrition, which allows certain genetic changes that are it's a variety of things, but the thing we have the most control of is our personal lives and chemicals in our environment. And its cosmetic industry is a huge problem. But the environmental, the EMF, the dental infections, dental materials, household products, it's really overwhelming and surprising. Well, it's not surprising, but it's good that people are finally recognizing that much of this epidemic of chronic disease is self-inflicted. We choose to do certain things. We choose to use certain products. We choose to use fluoride in our toothpaste, none of which are necessary for good health. So anyway, we reviewed that, and the long list of conditions that are now being recognized as autoimmune. So just encourage people to get off fluoride as much as possible, use more iodine, clean up the water you drink, clean up your environment with stop using chemical. Find chemical-free cleaning agents and get them out of your bath, especially hair colorings, antiperspirants. If you're worried about body odor, there are chemical-free anti-odor, anti-deodorants. But read labels. Aluminum is just a real
So you can see more of that, but the key is to start with something. On that segment, he jumped in and he told us about how he's learning Spanish, and he's been working on that now for 2 weeks.
I'm on day 14 or 15.
Day 14. So he's got a little streak going, and you just start with little things and you work your way forward. Overwhelming ourselves or overworking ourselves or breaking ourselves down so we can't do anything doesn't help the situation. We got to start with little things. So we're gonna jump now into our well segment here. So Freedom Friday with the Freedom's Bees. Thanks for following us on Facebook or on YouTube. So this is the well segment. So we've talked a lot about the Federal Reserve. We talked about the banks. I want to reiterate, our problem isn't with the banker or the loan officer at the local branch. We're fighting bigger ideas that have been perpetuated and have been taught to us over weeks and months and years and now even generations. And so to unpeel those ideas and to get back to the roots of being free, sometimes you have to really change your paradigm. But it helps to understand that. So banks aren't altruistic. Banks aren't altruistic in the sense that they're out here working for your benefit. They're working for their own benefit. We, particularly the benefit of the people higher up in the system. So Ephesians tells us that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. We wrestle against spiritual darkness in high places. And you can see some of these ideas. Have you ever noticed an idea that came down from a high place that wasn't good for the masses? How many times, right?
Well, I'm looking for one that's good for the masses. And but it's very interesting also, these high places sort of converge.
Okay.
The high places in the bank, it's like in the medical field.
Mm-hmm.
The president of the pharmaceutical board of directors all of a sudden leaves that job, and guess where he goes? He goes to the FDA or government regulatory agency or the CDC, and then vice versa. Someone comes from the CDC. Someone may say, "Well, he's out of that office now. We're getting rid of him." But guess where he goes? He goes over to Pfizer or Moderna or Johnson and Johnson. And gee whiz, I wonder if he's getting any benefits from moving around like that, but we sure aren't. Yeah. And it's just like you said in the bank. The bank, what do they do? Some banks might pay you 1% interest, when inflation is, like you said a week ago, inflation is 3 or 4%. Yeah. So the more you have your money in the bank, the more you lose. And I'll just, since we're talking about money, I just say, if you're a gold bug and you like gold, that's great. I think gold's a good way to maintain any savings you have. But the ratio of gold to silver is still something like a whole 100 to 1 to 100. It should be more like 1 to 10 or less. But we're
traditionally, the price of silver for an ounce of silver has been about 1/18 of the price of gold for the same ounce. And right now, he's pointing out that the price of gold to silver right now is really
it's around 33. Isn't gold over $3,000 an ounce now? Silver's still in the 30s.
So
it's artificially being suppressed.
Yeah,
and that's interesting. It's probably going to change very quickly. So you don't have a lot of time if you're interested.
Well, so that's a little interesting thing. But going back to these, that's the idea about the powers converging. So getting back here to the banks and the challenge that we all face to get ahead of our past circumstances. If you put your money in the bank and inflation outpaces the interest you're earning for having in the bank, see, the system beat you. Now, here's how the system beats you, though, right? The bank didn't leave the money in the bank. You got to understand that the bank doesn't take your money and leave it in the bank. Over the years, again, the people in high places have whittled down the rules, so you don't have to have $1 of gold in the bank anymore to lend out $1. You don't have to have $1 of silver in the bank anymore. Silver. Then you don't even have to have 50 cents. Then you don't have to have a quarter to lend out $1. Now it's down. I saw the report from a local bank lately, and they were bragging that they kept their reserves at 7%, which means they kept 7 cents on the dollar of their deposits, and they put the others out. Now, I pointed out a couple of podcasts ago that in 2020, right before the big pandemic, the banks changed that rule again, and they now reduce the reserve requirement to 0. So the banks do not have to have any reserves by law in the bank. Some banks will have a policy in place by their own board of directors to keep a reserve, but there's no requirement anymore. So a bank can take in $100 and loan that $100 out 100 different times. Now, keep in mind, so they're paying you 1%, 2%, 3% for the dollar you put in the bank. They're now loaning that same dollar out 100 times or 15 times or 25 times or 50 times. And every time they're loaning that dollar out, they're charging how much? They're not charging what they pay you. They're paying you 1 to 4%. They're charging between 6% on a home loan to 8 to 12% on a personal loan, all the way up to 30 to 35% on a credit card. Maybe 9% if it's a car loan in there, maybe around 10% if it's a business loan. And they always say, well, that's because of the risk. Okay, well, there's actually logic in that. But if you multiply the 36 times or the 18 times that they're loaning out the money, let's say they're all on houses. And so they loan it out 14 times. They loan out your dollar 14 times at 6%. They're getting a 90% return on your dollar, and they're paying you 2% interest.
And another thing it's important to keep in mind is that the Federal Reserve is not a government agency, theoretically working for us. The Federal Reserve is a private bank owned by the same, we talk about all these things converging. It's controlled by a group of private bankers. And the leaders of these banks are the ones that encourage America to bomb Iran. It encourages America to get involved in the war in Ukraine. It has to do with the Vietnamese War. If you want a quick review of this, there's not a Substack, but go to LewRockwell.com and or just Google Ron UNZ. He's about World War I, World War II, all these.
All right, you're getting a
Okay,
little
but I'm
ahead
saying
there.
the bankers are the people that are pushing for war.
Well,
Because
sure.
they really make money, 30% on their money when they do that.
Yeah, and so you're right. If you loan the money, some of your money, if you loan to the people fighting the wars, obviously they need some resources to fight a war.
Yeah,
So,
but it's our money that's getting America into a war.
right.
Keep that in mind when you go to the bank.
Yeah. So there's a solution to this, though, and that's, this isn't just about doom and gloom, right? We're talking about solutions. Freedom's Bees are people that work towards solutions and would love to work with others out there in the community, out there in the world, out there in the nation. Would love to work with you. So we work with you by building this community, discussing these ideas, and then figuring out how to work around them or come up with other solutions. So that's, like we talked about last week, the problem with the monopoly is that you can't compete and create the best solution. So you just have these problems and you have one person or one group tackling the problem instead of coming up with the best solution for the problem. So that's why the free market abhors monopolies. And but so in this wealth thing, the first thing you have to understand is you have to get advance in your wealth, you have to get ahead of inflation. That's the big obstacle. You have to get ahead of taxes, which is the second biggest obstacle in the long run. And how do you do that? Well, you do that by investing with each other. You do that by working with other local people, other local businesses. You work by shopping local. You do it by not using your Visa every time you shop, sometimes using cash or check so that you don't automatically give 3% to American Express or 3% to Visa just for the convenience of swiping that card. All these things will take away the prosperity of our local communities if we just all kind of do them absent-mindedly. Like every time you pay the baker with a Visa card, you immediately took 3% off of his gross, and his margin might have only been 8% in the first place, and you just took 3% off by giving that to American Express. So there's these little things that we can do. When we do our projects, we do not shoot to earn 1% or 2% or 3%. We won't do projects if we can only earn 3%. there is ways to beat this, but you have to, like my dad said in the first segment, you have to take some responsibility. You have to start learning about it, and you have to be active participants, in this case, in your own wealth, and not just turn it over to the financial planner, or not just turn it over to the bank, or not just turn it over. You certainly don't want to bury your talent in the backyard. Like, that's not the way to do what we're talking about. And so, anyways, that's our wealth segment for the day. Once again, we're the Freedom Bees. We're looking for a group of bees that want to do this with us. We're not here just to sit on the podcast every week. We're here because we're trying to gather a group of people that are interested in doing these things with us, whether it be improving our health, our wealth, our stealth as a group, or improving our relationship to our Creator, our God, who we're hoping stuff under God, and with His help and with His blessing. So that's that segment. Thanks for pointing out the convergence. That's a really good point. It helps understand that in these high places, the people meet together.
Like a big spider web.
Yeah. Okay.
I just too much. Anyway, that was good.